My name is Alka Joshi, and my debut novel is called The Henna Artist. Okay, so it is a morning in July, and I open up my email, and I see an email there from Emma Sweeney, my literary agent. And I open it, and it says, "We have a very nice offer." And I'm just looking at it, and I call my husband over, and I said, "Brad, can you come in here a minute?" So he did, and I said, "Can you read this for me?" So he read it, and he started jumping up and down right away. He was like, "Oh my God, Alka, this is it, this is it. Oh my God, you did it." And he saw me just still sitting there. And so he said, "Is everything okay?" And I said, "Well, it just doesn't feel real. I don't believe it. Is this real?" And he said, "Believe it, Alka, this is real." And it took me about another week to really absorb the whole news and to really feel like, oh my God, this book is finally getting published. After 10 years of working on it, it's going to be published. So in The Henna Artist, what's real are the sights and the sounds and the colors and the vibrancy of India. That is all very real. The caste system and how it impacts people, that's very real. The art of the henna and the art of aromatherapy and the various Ayurvedic medicines and herbal treatments, those are all very real. And the Maharani, Latika, is actually named after my mother. Her middle name was Latika. And that is fashioned after the real Maharani Gayatri Devi of Jaipur. She was the third wife of that Maharaja, and she wrote a book called A Princess Remembers, which I read and just loved. And so I fashioned that after her. So she's loosely based on that Maharani. And then, of course, there's Lakshmi, and she is very much based on my mother. She looks like my mother. She has the light eyes and the light complexion that my mother did. She is also very creative, and she has skills in artistry, which my mother did. My mother could do anything with any material and make it come out beautiful. And also, Lakshmi, like my mother, didn't have a choice about whether she wanted an arranged marriage, when she wanted to marry, whom she wanted to marry, how she wanted to marry, what she wanted to do with her life. And so in that way that they are both similar. But that's where the story diverges. So then what happens in Lakshmi's life about her fleeing a marriage, about her becoming a henna artist, figuring out some way to make a living, that part is all imagined, and it is the way that I imagined my mother's life could have gone had she not had the cultural responsibilities she did. I think that three things that a really good character, a compelling character needs are, number one, imperfection. Because human beings are not perfect. Lakshmi's not perfect. She has a lot of strengths, but she does have some weaknesses. You know, this is very true of Shakespeare. Shakespeare's characters all had tragic flaws. So while they were fabulous in one respect, in another respect it led to their death or to the dissolution of the entire community they were in. And it's important for readers to be able to empathize with a character, to be able to know that there is perfection and imperfection in one character. A second trait that I think is important is the ability to have some kind of a goal, determination, and intention. So in Lakshmi's case, her intention is to find an independent life, a way that she can fashion her own life, create her own destiny. And, you know, every character needs to have some tunnel that they're going through to get to the other side. And we as readers want to root along for them. So this is what happens with Lakshmi in The Henna Artist. A third characteristic is the character's ability to feel empathy, because we need to understand as readers that that character knows about a life larger than themselves, that they sympathize and empathize with the world around them. Because that's what we do as human beings, and we want to be able to know characters who also feel that way. So I had 3 major events happen in my life that led me to writing. The first was a job. And I was freshly out of college. I knew I wanted to do something in advertising. I had put together a portfolio and I went to McCann Erickson Advertising in San Francisco, one of the largest agencies. And I said, I want to be an art director. Here's my portfolio. They looked at it and they said, did you do all the concepts in this portfolio? And I said, yeah. And they said, well, we'll hire you as a writer because that's what writers do, you know. They come up with concepts. And I said, really? And they said, sure. So that was the first inkling I had that I could be a writer. A second major event in my life was the time that my brother bought a condo in Jaipur. And I had a chance to take my mother back and forth from California to India. And I got a chance to spend time with her in a way that I hadn't spent time with her before. It was just she and I. And we talked about her childhood, we talked about her early years, we talked about what it was like to be a young mother with 3 small children at the age of 22. And, you know, we talked about what it was like for her to then move the entire family to America, where my father had gotten a doctoral degree. And so, you know, that was a major event in which I started writing about her life in Rajasthan, and she encouraged me. She said, honey, keep writing this. This is really great. And just being in Jaipur at the time that I was writing this novel was really an important writing thing for me. And a third event in my life, and I owe a lot of credit to my husband for this, is that shortly after we were married, we took a road trip all the way from California to Idaho. And during that trip, I was entertaining him, because he was driving, with stories about my childhood in India. And he said, honey, these are really good stories. You should try writing some of these down. And so I did. And then when I was done, I showed them to him. And he looked at them and he said, wow. He said, you know, you might want to consider taking a writing workshop. And so while I was also working, I started taking writing workshops at night. And I had wonderful mentors, and they took such good care of my work and the criticism about the work and encouragement about the work that I just felt like, yeah, I want to do this. I want to do more of this. And so I eventually enrolled in an MFA program, and then 10 years later, we have the Henna Artist. So I'm working on 3 different kinds of things. One is a sequel to the Henna Artist, the same characters 10 years later, but 2 of the characters gain more prominence in the sequel. Another thing I'm working on is a graphic novel about my mother's life, which I've been really encouraged by the social media community to do. Because I've been talking about my mom, I've been telling stories about my mom, and everybody says, I can't wait until the next installment when you talk more about your mom's life. And then the third thing I'm working on is a set of cartoons about my geriatric dachshund for magazines, because he's a funny little guy and I like to talk about him.